the magic of a first date. Nervous smiles, awkward laughs, and maybe even a spark. But for some unlucky couples, that spark turned into a nightmare. What should have been the start of something beautiful became a descent into horror. These are the 5 most brutal deaths on a first date. And trust me, they're not for the faint of heart. Luis Fernando Cavalos was 24. Alexis Rodriguez was 27. The two met online and after some chatting decided to finally meet in person. It was August 21st, 2021, a warm, peaceful summer night in North Bergen, New Jersey. You can imagine the nerves, the excitement, maybe even a little spark. Their first date went well, at least well enough that Luis offered to drive Alexis home in his brand new 2022 Kia Stinger. But that night, filled with possibility, was about to take a tragic turn. Luis, clearly proud of his sleek new car, decided to show off a little or a lot. He began speeding through the quiet streets, pushing the engine hard, redlining it, roaring past intersections with the confidence only someone with a new toy and a bit of adrenaline could have. Just before 2 a.m., Officer John Nunes, who was sitting nearby, saw the Kia fly by. His radar clocked Luis at over 100 miles per hour. On top of that, he'd run a red light and was breaking a provisional license restriction. Nunes pulled the car over. In body cam footage, you can hear Alexis trying to take the blame, saying she was the reason they were in such a rush. But the officer calmly reminded her that while she may have influenced the situation, it was Luis who was behind the wheel, and it was his responsibility to drive safely. Nunes cited him for 3 violations: reckless driving, running a red light, and driving outside his permitted hours. But he actually showed some mercy, choosing not to slap him with more serious penalties. He let them go with a stern warning. Slow down, go straight home, don't do anything stupid. But the warning didn't stick. Just 13 minutes later, Officer Nunes was called to respond to a major crash nearby, and when he arrived on the scene, he was horrified to realize it was the same Kia he'd just pulled over. The car was mangled beyond recognition. Luis had crashed at high speed into the back of a tractor trailer that was making a delivery. The impact was so violent that the front of the car slid under the trailer and tore the roof clean off. The vehicle spun out and slammed into a wall. By the time Nunes got there, both Luis and Alexis were dead. They'd been practically cut in half. It was gruesome, devastating. Investigators later pulled the vehicle's black box data. Just seconds before the crash, Luis had been going 124 miles per hour. That's nearly 200 kilometers an hour. Even though he hit the brakes, he was still flying at 68 miles per hour when the impact happened. According to the report, the entire crash could have been avoided if Luis had just followed the law. If he'd simply listened to the warning he was given 13 minutes earlier, both he and Alexis would likely still be alive. It's hard not to feel for Alexis's family. Their daughter had just gone on a first date with a guy she met online, and that was it. One night, one decision, and she never came home. And honestly, it doesn't matter who said what in that car. The second your hands are on the wheel, you're in charge. You have a responsibility, especially with someone else in your passenger seat. This was a date that could have ended with a goodnight kiss. Instead, it ended in tragedy, a brutal reminder that driving recklessly isn't cool, it's deadly. On March 30th, 2016, in Sydney, Australia, Keith Collins, a 53-year-old businessman, was ready to begin a fresh chapter in his life, hopeful for love and new beginnings. Just days earlier, he had connected with a woman on Tinder, the popular dating app. Their conversations had flowed easily, and they decided to meet face-to-face. That evening was meant to be a simple, joyful first date. Keith was recently separated from his long-term partner and eager to move forward. The woman he met was Jovi Pillapil, 39, a mother of 3 and deputy director of nursing at Uniting Aged Care. They bonded over shared values, especially their dedication to their children. Keith was a father of 4 and a stepfather to 3 more. On that night, the couple met for dinner at Kangnam BBQ, a bustling restaurant inside Westfield Hornsby, a suburb north of Sydney. It was around 9:30 p.m., and the place was packed with diners enjoying their evening. But the night would soon turn into a nightmare. A man entered the restaurant, 45-year-old Alexander Villaluna, dressed in military-style clothing and exuding a menacing presence. Villaluna was Jovi's estranged ex-husband, a man with a history of stalking, abuse, and threats directed at her. That evening, he had been desperately searching for Jovi, contacting her family and workplace in an attempt to find her. Finally, his search ended at the crowded restaurant, where he spotted Jovi and Keith. Driven by jealousy and rage, Villaluna made his way to their table. Without warning, he confronted Keith from behind, demanding to know what he was doing with his wife. Then, horrifyingly, Villaluna pulled out a hunting knife. In front of shocked diners, he plunged the blade deep into Keith's neck and collarbone, then continued stabbing him repeatedly, targeting his neck and stomach with brutal relentlessness. During the chaos, Jovi tried to get up and defend herself. Villaluna immediately turned his fury towards her, slashing her arm and stabbing her in the abdomen. Then, horrifyingly, he returned to Keith, who was already gravely wounded. Keith summoned every last ounce of strength to crawl away from the attacker. But Villaluna pinned him down, pressing his knee on Keith as he stabbed him over and over until Keith stopped moving. Witnesses described the attack as terrifyingly calm and methodical, a brutal assault carried out with chilling composure. In the aftermath, a badly injured Jovi managed to escape and find refuge in a nearby shop. Meanwhile, Villaluna, covered in blood and still clutching his knife, walked calmly through the terrified crowd. There was no sign of remorse or panic, just eerie composure. He even sat by a fountain and reportedly called Jovi's daughter, calmly admitting he thought he had killed the man and stabbed Jovi as well. Police arrived quickly. Officers confronted Villaluna, with one brandishing a taser. Footage from the scene shows Villaluna surrendering peacefully, hands covered in blood. Emergency responders rushed Jovi to Royal North Shore Hospital, where she underwent surgery for multiple wounds, including a punctured sternum. Sadly, nothing could save Keith Collins. He died from his injuries. Keith was remembered by friends, family, and the community as a generous and well-liked man. As managing director of Elite Packaging Solutions in West Gosford, he was a respected businessman. Beyond that, he was deeply committed to youth sports, serving as president and junior coach of the Terrigal-Wamberall Sharks Junior Rugby League Club. He often employed young players and sponsored local teams, inspiring many with his kindness and leadership. His death left a devastating void in the lives of those who knew him. Alexander Villaluna was later sentenced to a maximum of 34 years in prison for murder and 12 years for wounding, with a non-parole period of 30 years. On July 29, 2012, Wariana Wright, a 26-year-old woman from New Zealand, arrived in Australia for a 2-week holiday and to attend a wedding. Known as Ree to her friends and family, she was cheerful, intelligent, and deeply cared about her relationships and animals. Her life, full of promise, would end tragically after a night with a man she met on Tinder. During her vacation, Wariana met Gable Toast, a 30-year-old carpet fitter from the Gold Coast. Gable had a loud personality and was known for recording his interactions with women. He lived in the Avalon Apartments complex, which offered sweeping views of surfers' paradise, often said to impress women. On August 7, 2014, Wariana and Gable met for their first date near his apartment. Their night started normally with drinks and conversation, and they eventually went to his apartment. As the evening went on and alcohol was consumed, the mood changed. Gable's habit of recording the date captured a heated argument between them. At one point, Gable ominously remarked how dangerous it would be to fall from his balcony. Wariana's behavior reportedly became erratic and aggressive. She threw decorative rocks and tried to hit Gable with a telescope. Gable physically restrained her to calm the situation. After midnight on August 8th, Gable locked Wariana out on the 14th floor balcony, a decision that would have fatal consequences. The recording revealed Wariana screaming and begging to be let inside, but Gable refused, effectively trapping her outside. At one point, he threatened her, saying she was lucky he hadn't thrown her off the balcony. Her desperate cries faded as the recording went silent except for faint screams. Trapped and terrified, Wariana tried to lower herself to the balcony below. However, intoxicated and unsteady, she lost her grip and fell to her death. After realizing what happened, Gable called his father, suggesting Wariana might have jumped. He then left his apartment through a back exit, ordered pizza, and wandered the streets before contacting a lawyer. His strange behavior, alongside the recording, made authorities suspect he was more involved than he claimed. The subsequent trial drew significant attention and division. Prosecutors argued that Gable's aggressive threats and actions had driven Wariana to such fear that she saw no choice but to attempt climbing down the building's exterior, leading to her death. Crown Prosecutor Glenn Cash maintained Gable's behavior left her no safe options. The defense countered that Gable acted in self-defense, restraining Wariana after she became violent. They claimed locking her out was a measure to protect himself, not to harm her, and that he did not intend her death. They described the tragedy as an accident. The jury faced a difficult decision, whether Gable's actions amounted to murder, manslaughter, or an unfortunate accident. After days of deliberation, Gable Toast was acquitted of both murder and manslaughter. The verdict left many feeling uneasy, with some believing justice had not been served for Wariena, whose promising life ended so tragically. For her family, the loss was made even harder by a legal outcome that offered little closure. In April 2016, 40-year-old Ingrid Line, a dedicated nurse and mother of 3 from Renton, Washington, was searching for a new beginning after her recent divorce. Known for her kindness, strong work ethic, and devotion to her daughters, Ingrid had focused much of her energy on raising her children and building a life rooted in care and stability. But like many, she still longed for companionship. Looking to rebuild her personal life, Ingrid turned to online dating, where she met a man named John Robert Charlton. The two began seeing each other, and on April 8th, they made plans for what appeared to be a simple night out, a Seattle Mariners baseball game. According to Charlton, they returned to Ingrid's home in Renton afterward, but what seemed like a normal date quickly turned into a nightmare. The next day, Ingrid failed to show up for work, something that was completely out of character. Friends and family quickly became alarmed when they couldn't reach her. Concern turned to panic, and soon Ingrid was reported missing. A search was launched, but just 2 days later, that search ended in horror. A Seattle resident, Mike Novation, made a grim discovery when he noticed several heavy garbage bags in his recycling bin. Through the plastic, he could see what appeared to be the outline of a human face, a moment he later described as haunting. Inside the bags were dismembered human remains, a head, an arm, and a leg. Police were quickly alerted, and it didn't take long for investigators to connect the remains to Ingrid Line and to her last known companion, John Charlton. Charlton was brought in for questioning, but his version of events was vague and suspicious. He claimed that after attending the game and going to a bar with Ingrid, he became so intoxicated that he had no memory of what followed. He even told police he had slept on a sidewalk that night. His account was riddled with inconsistencies and glaring omissions, especially considering what was soon uncovered at Ingrid's home. Inside her house, detectives found a disturbing and bloody scene. In the bathroom, they discovered a 15-inch pruning saw used in the dismemberment. Blood and pieces of tissue were also found, providing undeniable evidence of the brutal crime that had occurred there. Forensic analysis confirmed that Charlton had strangled Ingrid before cutting up her body and placing the parts into plastic bags, which he later disposed of in a random recycling bin. The case against Charlton quickly mounted. The physical evidence, his deceptive statements, and his erratic behavior pointed to one conclusion. He was arrested and charged with Ingrid Line's murder. During his trial, Charlton expressed remorse, but it did little to change the outcome. The court found him guilty, and he was sentenced to 27 years and 9 months in prison, the maximum punishment permitted under Washington state guidelines. Yet for Ingrid's loved ones, especially her 3 daughters, the sentence couldn't begin to fill the void left behind. In court, Ingrid's ex-husband, Phil Line, spoke emotionally about the loss. He emphasized that Charlton had taken someone who was never his to take, a mother, a nurse, a friend. Ingrid's death served as a chilling reminder of the potential dangers that can lurk behind seemingly ordinary online interactions, and of how one person's evil intentions can tear through the lives of many, leaving behind only grief, shock, and unanswered questions. On the night of December 8, 2015, 24-year-old Charlotte Brown, a bright and ambitious business consultant from Clacton, Essex, went on a date that would tragically be her last. Charlotte had met 28-year-old Jack Shepard, a website designer from Devon, through a dating app. She was at the start of a promising career, known by friends and family for her sensible nature, strong values, and magnetic personality. In contrast, Jack had a reputation as a champagne Casanova, flashy, irresponsible, and drawn to reckless behavior. That evening, Jack tried to impress Charlotte with an extravagant night out. They dined at the Shard, drinking champagne and enjoying the view, before heading to the River Thames where Jack had something unusual planned, a late-night ride in his personal speedboat. The 14-foot Fletcher Aeroflight GTO, which Jack had purchased second-hand via Gumtree, was in poor condition and lacking basic safety features. He had no proper boating license or formal training, and the vessel itself was riddled with mechanical defects, including faulty steering. There were no life jackets on board, and the boat's kill cord, a crucial safety device designed to shut off the engine if the driver is thrown overboard, was not connected. As the couple set off from Hammersmith Bridge, the risks escalated quickly. Jack, having consumed significant amounts of alcohol, drove the boat dangerously fast, reaching speeds between 26 and 34 knots, well above the legal limit for that section of the Thames. Charlotte grew visibly concerned during the ride, sensing that something was not right. Tragically, her fears were well-founded. Near Wandsworth Bridge, the boat struck a submerged log and capsized. Both Charlotte and Jack were thrown into the freezing December waters. Jack was eventually found clinging to the overturned hull, yelling for help, but notably he only called out to save himself, not Charlotte. When rescue teams pulled Charlotte from the river, she was unconscious, her body temperature dangerously low at just 25 ADC due to cold water immersion. Despite resuscitation efforts, she was pronounced dead. An investigation into the incident revealed the extent of Jack's negligence. Not only was the boat unsafe and unfit for use, but Jack had knowingly put Charlotte in danger by taking her out in the vessel while drunk and without safety precautions. Despite this, instead of facing the consequences, Jack fled the country. He was located months later in Georgia, a move that infuriated the public, especially when it was revealed he had received taxpayer-funded legal aid while on the run. In July 2018, Jack Shepherd was found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence in his absence. After his extradition from Georgia, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison for Charlotte's death, along with an additional 4 years for an unrelated assault. However, in January 2024, Shepherd was released after serving just half of his sentence, sparking renewed anger from Charlotte's family and the wider public. Charlotte's father has remained vocal about the injustice of the case, particularly frustrated by Jack's ongoing claim that Charlotte was steering the boat at the time of the crash, a claim that contradicts witness testimony and evidence. The tragic death of Charlotte Brown has served as a heartbreaking reminder of how reckless behavior and arrogance can lead to irreversible loss. Her family continues to campaign for justice and accountability, refusing to let her memory be overshadowed by Jack Shepherd's lies and evasions.